Hi everyone, this is Henry, and this is an impromptu let's try out a bit of video screen recording software that I've got thing, um, similar to the one that I used quite some time ago now to do an initial kind of tutorial on creating maps in Photoshop. And again, the subject is a map. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm getting involved. We've been discussing for several months now a new imaginations campaign with some chums of mine, most of whom have been involved in the previous 8th and 18th century campaigns. But this is an ancient imaginations campaign. Now, in fact, this was mentioned in my battle chat discussion that I had a couple of months ago with Simon Tonkis, whose name will come up again in this broadcast, in fact, and because Simon's involved. This sort of came about because I've been writing a book on campaigns. Don't know if you know about that. Let's not mention that at the moment. We've just had a general election. That's bad enough. But we'll talk about the fact that I've been writing a campaigns book to the extent that it got me researching Tony Barth's Hyboria campaign. Now, Tony Barth, his name's come up on Battle Chat as well. Very famous wargamer, sadly now deceased, very famous from the kind of 1960s through to the kind of 1980s. I can't remember when he passed away, unfortunately. But Tony Barth was a friend of Don Featherstone. He lived in Southampton. He was a huge kind of, ancients guy. He collected flats. And Phil Ollie, well-known wargamer Phil Ollie, whose name will also come up in this, I think it acquired some of Tony Barth's flats, the wonderful things that appeared in Don Featherstone's book. Oh gosh, War Games. I'm reaching over here. You can see me reaching over here because I'm standing up. I don't spend too much time looking at my belly, but here is the book that Don Featherstone wrote that kind of got the modern hobby going. And in there, Tony Barth is featured because Tony Barth, I think, provided the ancient warfare rules, and they fought the Battle of Trimsos using Tony Barth's flat figures. I don't know if you can see there. Glories of black and white from back in the day. There we go. There's a double page spread of pictures featuring Tony Barth's flats. And this book, War Games, was first published, what was it, 1962. 1962. I was 1 year old when this was published. Wow. But Tony Barth went on to do lots of fabulous stuff, and including his most famous book, I think it's his most famous book, Contribution to Wargaming, which is this, setting up a War Games campaign that was published by the War Games Research Group in, I reckon, 1986 this was. So he obviously lived through to the late 1980s. Great book. Ran to 4 editions in total. I think this is the revised 3rd edition. I think it might have had another edition after that. So, but it's full of useful stuff. Gets mentioned quite a lot in my forthcoming book about wargaming campaigns. But anyway, what you're staring at in the middle there, I'll wave my mouse around. You're thinking, what's this big blank rectangle? And this is Photoshop. I'm waving my finger around, but that's no good. I'll wave my cursor around because you'll see it better. And that shows you this is Adobe Photoshop. And there's tools down the left-hand side here, and there's various kind of panels and things over here for typesetting and for layers and other stuff. Okay, there's a measurement rulers. Now that gives you a clue because those rulers are in millimeters. So you can see that this is a sheet here, a white sheet that's 420 millimeters wide by 594 millimeters deep. That makes it, in Euro sizes, A2 size, which is 4 times the size of A4 because it goes A4, A3, and this is A2. and it's at 300 dots per inch. That's big. It's quite a big file. This is probably close to what, 100 megabytes. If I go down into the bottom left-hand corner, it tells you, whoops, excuse my doc, it tells you down in the bottom corner there where I'm waggling my mouse, it's 99.6 megabytes in its compressed state, and when it's uncompressed, it's 382 megabytes. And it's going to get a lot bigger than that eventually. What is this? Oh, goodness me. This is where I get to hold up some more stuff. You may recall one of my 18th century campaigns featured the sort of North African-ish place called Bizarbia, which is a place that I invented, and Bizarbia because it's sort of Byzantine and sort of Arabian, hence Bizarbia, and I produced a map for it that looked like that. It was all kind of done in hexagons and things. Can you see that? Became famous because the capital city is called Teletubby. And Teletubby's just here under my finger. Teletubby, get it? Yes, yawn, pun. And there's a number of other completely ridiculous, silly names of places going on there. Okay, now that was for the 18th century. Also, of course, I produced lots of sort of Europeanish countries. Some of you may remember seeing a picture that I did in my conducting war games campaign series, Wars of the Valtinian Succession series in Battle Games magazine. This is the original map, or a photograph of the original map, because the original map is on tracing paper, and it is in fact, it might be A2 or even A1 size, big pieces of tracing paper that created, where I created Futland and Punktland. Okay, and the Grossmeer, the sea, kind of Mediterranean sea here, and there's the river Sturmwasser up the middle, and Martinstad up there at the top, the little state there, and indications of other countries to either side. But this was kind of I did a photograph of that great big tracing paper map and added the kind of labels there, Futland and Punktland, some years ago now. But there you are, that was kind of the original, going way back to the 1980s. But that grew and grew and grew because of other campaigns that we've done and have added to that. And in fact, you'll remember, I've got some other bits here, that we did the Grand Prix and Grand Nuits campaigns as well. And if I hold this up, that's a miniaturized printout again from the series I did on that in was it Battle Games, or it might have been Miniature War Games with Battle Games magazine by that time, showing this is the old original kind of Prunkland Faltenland area, but this is the area that got added in. So you've got Grand Nuits and Grand Prix, okay, and Gelderstad over here. So all sorts of exciting extra bits. And again, there we are. So that whole coastline got extended. The place is getting very big. Then we also added to that in due course. We added in the whole area of Borgenmark and Schwitz, kind of to the northwest of that area, and you can see, so we got more ocean at the top, and there were landings right up at the top here, and mountains and hills. This was kind of my first really big atlasy style map, looking at a more kind of as if you were looking at a proper atlas, so a more, would you say realistic? I don't know, but it was a different style that I used, and I quite liked it. I'm not going to show up the Dalia Chindra map, which is vast, okay, and obviously in a different part of the world. But this is just to show you where it got added in, and so there's this northern, look at all these lovely fiddly bits, fjords and stuff. As Slarty Bartfast said in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, he won an award for his fjords, and up the top there you can see all sorts of little fjordy areas and lakes and what have you. Okay, so what I've been doing is, apart from disturbing one of my cats who's next to me here, that's Chuffy, is decided, right, okay, I've done all that mapping work, so I don't want to waste it. Why not just backdate it for an Ancients campaign? Because, there's Bizarbia, and a lot happened to Bizarbia. One of my gaming chums from the setup, Paul Bright, actually did some games, a mini campaign set much further south in sort of a central South African kind of vibe place that would be kind of way down here somewhere. But I think this is, fine for Bizarbia. So what I decided to do was use that as the basis of backdating the map about 2,000 years from 1750 to, a couple of hundred years BC, something like that. And I did an initial pencil sketch, and this is, can you see that? This is this sort of initial pencil sketch. The lighting's not brilliant for showing you this kind of thing, but you'll see again in more detail in a minute. But this was just literally on an A3 piece of paper, mapping out that Bizarbian coast and the Central Ocean and these other areas here, in a way that I thought, well, over a couple of thousand years, maybe there have been sea level changes, islands may have disappeared in the meantime. So going back 2,000 years, there they are. They've popped up out of the ocean. They're still not underwater. So that kind of makes life more interesting. And let's kind of go straight to showing you what I did. I did a photograph of that pencil sketch map and just plopped it onto this big piece of paper. There you go, in the middle there. Now you can see in much bigger detail if I zoom in a bit. Okay, there's Bizarbia, the coast of Bizarbia. And some other indications of, this area up here would be Prunkland, Faltenland, and we've got, Grand Prix here and the beginnings of Grand Luis and so forth over here. But also starting to take the map a bit further west than I've been before. But that's just kind of the starting point, okay? And everything was just very, very rough in my head, literally sketching and plopping in roughly where I thought certain people might go. I've changed my mind about that in discussion with the guys subsequently, as you'll see. But that was the starting point. And all I did was bring it into Photoshop as a layer on its own. If I highlight that layer here, you can see over on the right, that's the layer with that map on. And I traced its outline, not reasonably exactly, but not too exactly, because after all it's just a sketch, and the outline looks like that. So if I zoom out, you can see the whole piece of paper. So you can see there's that central piece of paper where I've copied the outline, and then I've just extrapolated from there, and then looking at the map that I did for the Borgenmark area and Schwitz and so forth, I've kind of put in that a northern coastline kind of idea, lots of fjordy stuff going on. Again, this may be adjusted, we will see. And also extending the Bizarbia map a bit further south, because there wasn't room for it on that initial sketch on the piece of paper there, covering the area that was in my original Bizarbian map and a little bit beyond. Because I don't want this campaign, it's already going to be in a vast area, I don't want the campaign to go too far south initially. The action's going to be concentrated mostly in this central area to begin with. Now, the next decision I made was dependent on the number of participants and where they lived. Okay, so what I thought, having been doing a lot of thinking about campaigns, as I said, one of the things that occurred to me is, what are campaigns for? Campaigns, ideally, as far as war games are concerned, are excuses for getting together and fighting battles. So what I wanted to avoid as far as possible is having situations where you've got two armies, they bump into each other on the map, and one player involved lives in Southampton and the other one lives in John O'Groats, just basing on UK, let alone someone further afield, abroad or whatever. Okay, so I thought it would be sensible to actually place countries, nations, peoples on the map in accordance with where the participant actually lives, so that they actually get a chance when they bump into a neighbour on the map, they're literally bumping into a near neighbour in reality, so they can actually get together and have some battles. Seemed like a sensible idea to me. So what I've done is looked at the players we've got and plopped them in appropriate places. So I'm going to start with me at the bottom. There's the Bizarbian Empire. That's me. I'm way down the south of the country in Brighton and Hove. I think I'm the southernmost player. The next most southernmost player, actually a bit further up in Essex, is, as he's known on our forum, Essex boy Ian Burt. And so his kind of mixture of Greek and Persianish sort of get together army, I thought, well, that could go sort of there, couldn't it? It's sort of sounding a bit Byzantine, perhaps a bit more Byzantine than my Bizarbians. But with a kind of Persian flavour as well. So Greco-Perse, the name may change. This is approximate. Since he's in Essex, I'm likely to bump into him at some point, and vice versa. So how about we put him not too far north of me, sort of here, okay? Then we've got Jeremy, who's got a sort of Carthaginian empire. Now, he lives in Bury, which is near Manchester. There's, as you'll see, there's quite a distance between us and the next most northernmost player, which is Jeremy. But his country's called Lectoria. So that's sort of over here, sort of a Carthage vibe, that sort of thing, sort of a Spanishy, Carthaginianish, we'll see. But that seemed like a sensible place to put him. The next player, let's mention him again, Simon Tonkis. Now, Simon, till very recently, lived in Lincolnshire, so it made sense to put him, not too far north on this map. He also was very keen on the original Howard novels, Conan the Barbarian and so forth, and so he chose the name of Arcadia. Okay, so I plopped him there. There was an exchange we had on Twitter, a bit of punning and ribaldry, where he was talking about he'd bought a whole load. His army consisted of a whole load of old school garrison miniatures and the like that he'd bought. They were already painted, and some he got from his old collection already painted, but he hated the way they'd been painted. He wanted to start from fresh. So to peel the paint off, he put them in a big bucket of Dettol, which apparently is a fantastic way of stripping paint, if a very smelly way of stripping paint. Dettol, for those who don't know, from our American cousins, maybe Australians, Dettol is a kind of disinfectant, right? It's pine-smelling disinfectant. So Simon's troops are all going to smell very clean, very well washed. We created this idea of them actually, before they got to battle in Bizarbia, they had to stop off at the island of Dettol, right? And that's the island of Dettol. Yeah, terrible, isn't it? But that island, it was a stopping point before the men then progressed on to try and invade Bizarbia. And of course, I will see them off in short order, but we'll see. Anyway, so there he was in Lincolnshire. It seemed like a good placement for him. There's Ian in Essex and Jeremy in Bury. And then what's happened is actually Simon's just moved to Yorkshire, North Yorkshire at that. But you know what? That's where Arcadia's staying for the time being. And we will overcome the logistical problems in due course. Pardon me while I have a sip. Okay, next up we have Phil Ollie. Phil Ollie's got a sort of a successors-y, Macedonian-y kind of vibe going on. He's actually, where are you, Phil? Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Midlands somewhere. So again, it seems sensible to plop him there. And that looks kind of like, in relation to sort of a Greeky bunch, which is what Simons are. That's a good placement for a kind of a Macedonian sort of bunch. These are all very approximate. Notice no country borders yet placed in, nothing like that. But I thought, rivers are often form borders, and there's a couple of rivers. Let's plonk them in between those two. That looks all right. Then we have Jamie. Jamie came along. Jamie's collecting Romans. He likes Romans, Imperial Romans, Republican Romans, whatever they are. Where are you, Jamie? You're sort of getting north as well, aren't you? Lancashire, Yorkshire, not sure which. Oh, must confuse the two, I know. But as far as we're concerned, you're heading a bit further north. So that's where Jamie ends up. in this sort of area here. That would be a nice kind of Mediterranean-y hot vibe going on for him there, with it getting the map, things on the map getting cooler further north. So that's where Simon is with his Ramona Tati. We discussed the name of his people and we came up with Ramona Tati. That'll do. I think the Ramones, the band the Ramones, came into the discussion. What a bit of fun. Next, here we go. We've got Andy McMaster, well known online as Belisarius, Count Belisarius, and he is in Newcastle upon Tyne, YA. So I plopped him there. Now, there's a bit of a thing because he's not been painting very much. But because of where he is, I think he can carry on painting in reasonable pigs for some time. We'll just all have to agree not to invade him for the time. That would be unfair, wouldn't it, to go in and do a land grab while he's still trying to get his first unit painted up. That would not be fair. He's a painting demon, really, but he's got other stuff that he's working on as well. We'll get there. It doesn't matter. Then I'm going to move next to John Francis, known as LT on our forum, who's known quite a lot around the shows. He was part of the Scenes group, I think, or South End War Games Club, I can't remember what. Well known for putting on lots of DBA style games over the years. But John, lovely guy. John, however, greedy. He's got two armies, not one, but two. One of them is called Gaulois, the other one is called Aquitaine. Now, the Gaulois are, as the name implies, a bit sort of like Asterix and his Gauls. And the other one, Aquitaine, well, they are medieval. There's no other way for it. But we're taking a broad brush approach to ancients in the same way as Tony Bath and the War Games Research Group, Phil Barker and the War Games Research Group have sort of 3000 BC up to 1485 AD. So if you want something a bit medieval, he's allowed to. Okay, so this is sort of 100 Years' War Frenchy kind of vibe. So we've plopped the Gaulois here and the Aquitainers further north. Okay, they're sort of cool and classy, but they're up there. The reason also being he lives in Scotland. Not the only player who lives in Scotland, but what this means is that with him up in Scotland, it looks like his two armies, he might have to do some solo games if his two armies fight against one another, or he could call in someone to, play one side for him. But also, if the Ramona Tati, Jamie's Ramona Tati, decide to kind of head north, then it's a relatively short drive from him to Scotland or to Newcastle upon Tyne. Okay. Here we've got Paul Bright with his Golden Horde. Now, Paul also lives in Scotland, hence he's up there on the map, right? But the Golden Horde, that's just kind of an indication of where they usually arrive, because they are sort of a Mongol, Timurid, that sort of Genghis Khan-y mob who arrive from places further east, but that tends to be the corridor that they use to come in and cause everyone else trouble. But again, because he's in Scotland, not too far to Newcastle upon Tyne, or, if he fights his way right across the map to John over there, then, again, it's Scotland versus Scotland. And finally, we have Doug, another Scottish guy with a sort of Highlandy, northern wasteland Viking vibe, I believe. Well, he's up there with all the fjords and that kind of stuff, right? So we basically got to kind of think in terms of the British Isles. We've got Scotland, Northern England, Midlands, also Midlandy over there, and us Southerners, me and Ian down here. And Simon is the anomaly in the middle of it all, who should be a bit further north. But hey, whatever, as is common parlance these days. So anyway, I thought you'd find that enjoyable to see how I've organised that. Now, this map at the moment is just black and white, and that's going to stay that way for a time. Obviously over here, if I want to, if I wave my cursor over here and show you on the left hand side of the screen, there's the color picker, and I can set the foreground color to be whatever I want. I could choose, a nice grassy green for maps or whatever I need it to be, right? That's fine. But for the time being, actually, I'm just doing it in black and white, keeping it simple. First of all, because it's sort of an ancient era map, right? And secondly, because I don't want to get too detailed, too bogged down in what should be what precise color at the moment, right? I haven't placed any cities or towns yet. I think most players have got an idea of where their capital city is going to be, at least for each of their peoples, but I'll place those in due time. The only place that has got things sort of set in stone is my Bizarbian cities, because this area has been used before, and so there's a number of cities you can see just in pencil on that overlay there. But as soon as I take that overlay off, and it all goes white, there's nothing set in stone, but Teletubby will be, I think, where it is at the moment. Other things I haven't put in yet: mountain ranges. Now, mountain ranges, fairly easy to detect where mountain ranges should be. If you follow the rivers upriver to where their source is, it's going to be in higher ground. They flow down towards the sea. Okay, so there's going to be a number of mountain ranges clearly round here somewhere, and some up in the north, which will be the source of these rivers. But again, there will have been some geological activity in the intervening couple of thousand years, so I'm going to leave myself a bit of freedom. Forests, obviously there's going to be, I would imagine, quite a lot more forest in this period than in the later 18th century period, simply because over time a lot of forest has been cut down to make way for agriculture and stuff. You know, we're familiar with that pattern in modern times. Look at what's happening to the Amazon rainforest, sadly, where stuff gets cleared, people settle, they start agriculture. Whereas this is going to be, a couple of thousand years ago, so much wilder in its field, much bigger, more extensive forests, fewer roads, fewer cities, fewer towns, probably still quite a lot of minor villages and that kind of stuff, but a more empty sort of place. And also, I didn't want to hide behind myself, because at the moment I'm still deciding precisely what the mechanisms for this campaign are going to be. Going back to that point, basically what we've got here is a bunch of guys who've all decided in a moment of madness, oh yes, let's do some sort of old schooly kind of Ancients campaigning. We're going to be using Warhammer Ancients Battles version 1.5 for the games, and it's all about fun. So I don't want to bog the campaign down with too much detail, because my tendency is, I have to confess, to bung in way too much detail way too quickly. So I'm leaving it fairly loose and open for the time being, until we've settled more on, is everyone happy with these placements, checking on how far have people got with collecting their armies. Simon, famously at the moment, is again doing a Kanban plan, tracking what everyone's up to. But I just thought, in the last few minutes of this, what I hope is only intended to be a short video, I'm just going to give you a quick insight into how this outline has been created in Photoshop. And what I have here, I use a stylus. There's the stylus. You can see the stylus, and a pad like this. Okay, there's my reminder telling me that I've got a dinner party tomorrow night. So I'm just going to zoom in on the map and add an island, and show you how something else is done. The other thing I did was to make it clearer where all the water is. There we are. That sort of makes everything pop, doesn't it? I've done a background there where I've shown where the oceans and so forth are, oceans and lakes. But let's just zoom in on the Central Sea here. And I'm going to select the brush tool, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on the outline level there, and I'm going to pick up where my cursor is somewhere. Oh, it's in the middle there. Okay, I'm going to add another little island sort of over here in northern Bizarbia, where this inlet is, like so. So I'm just going to go ahead and really just waggle a bit. Can you see that happening there? Like so. What I'll do is I'll Apple Z that, and we'll zoom in even further so you can definitely see what's going on there, right in the middle of the screen. Okay, So I've just got the pen tool with a brush selected, very tiny brush. It's only got a 5 pixels wide, and it's a shade of grey. And I'm just going to waggle like so. The way to make this look naturalistic is just to waggle a lot. So if you've got a shaky hand, you're at no disadvantage whatsoever. Okay, like so. There's an island. Okay, that looks like somewhere. Can't think of where it looks like, but it looks like somewhere, doesn't it? And the next thing I do very simply is I get the magic wand tool and click inside that. I increase the size of that slightly, expand it by 2 pixels. I already have that set up. Go to the water level and hit delete and deselect. Ta-da! Island. I'm not naming any of these islands yet. There's obviously there's a lot more islands than in the 1800s map. There's obviously what's happened is the sea levels must have risen in the intervening years. But I think it's quite nice since we're going to have sort of an ancients thing, and one thing that's notable about the kind of Greco feel of a lot of ancient history and naval battles is islands came into it a lot. Lots of sort of little island hopping campaigns. It also means that people have got little bits that they can capture. You know, they can raise a fleet, send in, capture a couple of islands and set up their own kind of mini colonies, which I thought would be a nice idea. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a lake. Now, where else needs a lake? I've created quite a few up here, but obviously we like it's a bit wet. How about a fairly substantial lake that flows to the sea in this corner here? I'm going to zoom in again. There we go. So I'm going to say that this river here begins at a lake, so there's going to be some mountains or something happening here. So I'm going to, in fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to create another river. This is very, whoops, Apple D, let's deselect that, and I've had the wrong tool selected. Doing things in too much of a hurry. See, I'm going to go to my outline layer, go to this thing here, which is a bit of a blobby bit, and let's create a nice waggly river going up to somewhere near the source of that river. So it means there's going to be some mountains going on around here somewhere. And what I'm going to do at the head of this one is I'm going to extend that line out and create a reasonably waggly, extensive lake like that. Okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. It really doesn't matter. Now I'm going to get my magic tool and again select modify expand by 2 pixels and make sure I'm on the right layer there. I need to go to the water layer, and now I need to fill that, edit, fill, and in this case I'm filling it with the foreground color, which is that black, like so. But because up here, I don't know if you can see where I'm waggling there, follow my waggle over here to where it says opacity. That layer's only got a 15% opacity, which is why it now appears that pale grey. Okay, deselect. Let's zoom back out. We've added a lake. So that's how you create a lake. That's how you create an island. What I could have done, hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? When I was first starting this map, and I may still go back and change it, is just completely fill that background layer, the water layer that's down here, with that grey, so that as soon as I cut through it, it reveals that colour. Which would make things simpler actually, but that's for another time. We can talk about that another time. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. Just a really quick introduction to this is the real beginnings, the genesis of this kind of Hyboria style campaign, which will be centered around Bizarbia, and I'll no doubt be inviting lots of people to come and beat the hell out of my poor Bizarbians, placing, how many have we got? Well, 10 or a dozen players at the moment, and I think that's as big as I wanted to get for the time being. This is obviously, like all campaigns, and particularly in my case, has the uh, dangerous tendency to go bananas and suddenly have loads and loads and loads of people taking part, and then I can't cope with it. And I have got, I'm self-employed, got full-time work to do, plus I'm coping with a spot of cancer at the moment, which can suddenly, denude me of energy and so forth. But I think this is going to be a nice way of doing it, and I'm hoping that by placing the players on the map in correlating to the actual geographical situation means that when they bump into each other, it's more likely it's going to be easier for them to actually get together, put toys on the table, and have a battle. But anyway, that's the first of this series of videos. And I'm going to make it a series of videos showing you how I build up the map, and then eventually, of course, when the campaign gets underway, I'll hope to be able to report to you, like a live news broadcast, as it were, of what's actually been happening in the campaign. In the same way as Tony Barth used to write up his goings on in his Hyborian campaign in, what was it back then, military modelling, then Battle for Wargamers, and so forth, so that you can follow what's going on, and hopefully it's all going to be a lot of fun. So thanks for watching this, and I will see you again soon. Thank you.